Hello and welcome to the podcast, Sharing Stories, Changing Lives. I'm thrilled to welcome an extraordinary guest today, one of Canada's most sought-after motivational speakers, Mr. Alan Kehler. Alan is a husband and a father of four. And I have a strong sense that this might be the accomplishment that he is the most proud of, but it doesn't stop there. Alan is a best-selling author, mental health advocate, and quite frankly, the perfect guest for a podcast centered around sharing stories, as Alan shares not only his own, but also the stories of others, particularly men, in his book, Mental Health. It's time to talk. With over 2 decades of experience in the field of mental health and wellness, Alan has empowered countless individuals to face life's challenges head-on. Whether it's about overcoming adversity, building resilience, or fostering authentic connections, Alan's insights resonate deeply, inspiring people from all walks of life to take action and find strength in their struggles. I love that, strength in their struggles. Alan's passion for helping others shines bright, and I know this because I follow his journeys on social media where he shares his experiences, offering meaning to even the smallest of interactions, seemingly smallest, maybe I should say, leading with his heart and signing off each of his posts with, "Keep talking, my friends." So, without further ado, let's talk. Welcome to the show, Alan.
Candace, what an intro. Thank you so much. Grateful to be here.
Yay, did you like that? I had fun
Loved
writing it.
Amazing.
Well, listen, Alan, this is just an amazing moment for me. It seems that you and I are like a little bit of ships passing in the night, whether it's geographically where you're somewhere and I figure it out, and then I'm somewhere and you figure it out. But also there is, so much synchronicity with our messages. And, while our stories are different, as everyone's stories are, we are both all about creating safe spaces for people to share. And we are also both all about being vulnerable and showing that so that we understand, so that other people understand that it's okay, to not be okay. I read your book, Men, for the listeners, Men is indicating mental health. It's time to talk. And while I haven't had the opportunity to hear you live, and I didn't look into your personal story by design, because I've known you were going to be a guest on this show for a really long time. So I know what I've seen when I follow you on social media, but I wanted to hear it from you with fresh ears, just like the listeners. And, before I let you dive into all of that, I also just wanted to say that your work really resonates and is so eye-opening, thought-provoking, and helpful for me in my work, because I share my story primarily with male-dominated industry. So I'm working in mining, I'm working in pulp and paper, I'm working in manufacturing. And while the fact that, men are not super keen typically on, looking at the directions and trying to figure it out themselves, or basically like they have difficulty sometimes in generalizing, but for the most part, sharing emotions and whatnot. I guess what I'm trying to say is, if I'm out speaking and saying to a group of people, it's so important we ask questions, it's so important we speak up. I guess really the precursor to having anyone be able to do those things is to ensure that they feel that they're in a safe space, that their job isn't in jeopardy, their reputation isn't in jeopardy, they can do so without judgment. And I thought that we were further along in this path, but I think that might be a little bit of wishful thinking. Like, we're on the right path to opening up the door for these conversations, but there's much work to be done. And you're out there doing it.
Well, as are you. And you said it perfectly, Candace. We create those safe spaces. Vulnerability breeds vulnerability. And because you go to that place, it gives them permission to do the same. And for that reason, I really firmly believe that probably the two most powerful words are "me too." Because that was a game changer in my personal journey. Just knowing that there was actually someone else who was going through some of the same challenges as me was liberating. And essentially what you do through your story is you help people to find their voice. And you're right. So many individuals, regardless of gender, still struggle to do so, especially in the context of mental health, because there's so many barriers, or there's that fear of judgment, or they don't want to be perceived as weak. When I would argue that both of us, Candace, ultimately redefine what it means to be strong.
100%. I always say, this whole idea of powering through, that's not strength. Strength and bravery are courage is saying, I can't. I need help. I don't know the answer. Could you explain it to me again? These are all to me what it means to redefine what it means to be strong, and to do what you need to do to protect yourself and to protect your family.
Well said.
Yeah, yeah. So tell me, let's start, if we could, from the beginning. What sparked this journey for you?
It's interesting, who grows up wanting to struggle with mental illness? Who grows up wanting to be an addict? And who grows up thinking that they're going to be a motivational speaker or share their story on a stage? Not me.
Right.
The short and sweet is, this is so much bigger than me, Candace. It always has been. I'm in the process right now of writing my own story. And that in itself, it's like, oof. I had an elder who told me once, when you go to those places, make sure that you take a friend and a flashlight, because every single person, every listener has a story, has that dark period of their life. And yet here they are. And I think that the reason that we continue to all exist is because we have unfinished business down here. There's meaning, there's purpose. And I have fully bought into the fact that the only reason that I'm alive after a complete life of self-destruction is to share that message. And, it's so hard to try to capture one's journey in a short amount of time. And I guess the short and sweet for me is, I grew up small town Saskatchewan. It was kind of living in a fishbowl. The last name meant something. There was always that reputation at stake. And so I performed really well. I was a great actor. And on the outside, I guess I just painted a very different picture than what was taking place on the inside, because people saw me as the guy who was present to the school, athlete of the year, captain of sports teams. And then even years later, I received this national scholarship as an outstanding community citizen, but I was an addict. And nobody knew.
Even in high school, this addiction was part of your story.
Yeah, the alcoholism started around the age of 16.
Okay.
It took me forever to connect the dots that I was an alcoholic, because I just thought that's what men do.
Right.
I guess, in hindsight, grade 8 is absolutely where everything started to unravel. Body dysmorphia, which was later diagnosed. But that dominated my life. I couldn't look in a mirror for 13 years. I left home as soon as I was 16 for a private school. Then I go off to Holland. I started hanging out with the gangs. I got into a different crowd. Okay. And then I really just ran around the world for a long time, until one day you realize, you can't run away from self. And that place where, and I think everyone has some of those proverbial forks in the road where you either do a hard left or hard right. And I had many of those, one of which at one point, just collapsed outside of a classroom. I was teaching. I was a functioning addict. I was given a month to live from a doctor due to my absolute destructive lifestyle. And I remember at this time, my life is fueled with alcohol, living at the casino, right? Because I was a compulsive gambler and I lost everything to that. Wow. I was having seizures almost every day, and I'm functioning, until my body just said, we can't do this anymore. And I had that embarrassing collapse in the school. And what strikes me about that moment in particular is, in active addiction, unfortunately, if you get too close to us, we get rid of you. And there wasn't a single person, Candace, at that point who actually knew the magnitude of my struggles. And that's on me. But I remember, I'm teaching special ed at the time. I loved my students. And they're kind of in the hallway peering over me and they're like, "Mr. K, you okay?"
Right.
And it was the same thing. It was the smile, the "yeah, no, I'm good." No, I wasn't. And I think that was the first time where I was like, "This sucks." Like I'm so tired of this life. There just has to be something more. Because I didn't know if the sun would rise for so many nights. And that was not the wake up call for me to get sober. It was probably another 3 years, but it it's those little monumental moments where we start to have an open mind and start to try to do something different. And for me, the biggest game changer, finding my voice, was because I gave myself permission. I found the courage to walk into support groups where I felt like I could be understood, where I started to hear my story through others. And that helped me to understand that we don't have to fight our battles alone. We weren't born to fight our battles alone.
So you say, oh, so much. I have so many notes here of things to talk to you about, and I can throw them all. I'm not close enough. There. I could throw them all out because this is just going to flow.
Yeah.
So you say, I didn't know if the sun was going to rise. And that really resonates with me. After I lost my leg, I remember trying to be so strong. And I mean, I think at the time, I don't think I knew I was trying. I thought it was all real. And people say to me, "Oh, how did you get over it?" Or "When did you get over it?" And now my answer is, "I'll let you know." I'm trying to do things now to understand what happened to me then. Because at 21, I wasn't old enough. I wasn't mature enough. I didn't have what I needed to understand how to comprehend the weight of my loss, if I could say it that way. And I can remember knowing that the sun was going to rise. I never felt like it wasn't, but lying in bed and waiting to see the sun come through the vertical blinds. And then I would know the night was over and that I made it through another night alone, because I didn't want to upset my family any extra. I didn't want, I wanted to put on that positive face in the daytime, but I couldn't sleep at night because of phantom pain. So I really understand in a way of that feeling of, what is this next day going to bring in this life with what I'm dealing with now, and the importance of knowing that you're not alone. I also, for the listeners who might be listening to this and wondering, is my relationship with alcohol or XYZ, is it fun? Is it partying? Or is it an addiction, right? Like, I think when I think back to after I got hurt, and even in high school, I definitely can say I had substance abuse issues. We called it fun. We called it partying. But I can look back now and recognize that there was a lot that I was trying to escape from. And there was a lot that I was trying to mask and to just have have an escape from. So, what would you say is a defining difference between what's just a good time, truly, what's fun, and then what is something that people should be looking out for, to say, hey, this is more serious than I'm letting on, like a cue.
That's great insight that you can look back and recognize that, Candace. And I
Yeah.
have the same. I think for me, my definition of addiction today is very simple. It's a way to live outside of self so that we do not have to be with self.
Mm-hmm.
Renowned addiction expert, Dr. Gabor Mate, always says, don't ask why the addiction, ask why the pain.
Right.
I was hurt. I had so much pain inside, but I did not know how to look at that. I did not want to look at that. Try to make me look at it, and I will react with anger. Anger was my greatest defense mechanism.
Yeah.
Any counselor, any educator who wanted me to go within, No, because it also goes back to what you spoke about earlier, Candace, where that was never modeled for me as a young man. It wasn't modeled that it was okay to go within, to be vulnerable, to shed a tear, to reach out for help. So why would I? So those old scripts of, I got to just be strong and be independent and in control, were an incredible barrier. I
Right.
think that for me, the definition of healing is the more that you get the darkness out, the more room you're going to make for light. And
You said you actually I can I say it exactly the way you said it in the book?
yeah,
Take
yeah, sure.
talking is a release of the negative energy that festers and gets trapped inside us. This then provides room for positive energy to enter and restore some type of balance in the body and mind. I love this because I
Mm,
think what a great way to reframe sharing what's on your mind, sharing what's got you down, sharing your struggles. It's not about being weak. It's not about whining. It's not about any of that. It's about making space for more positivity because you're getting that out. I always say you don't have to have the solution to somebody's problem to ask if there is one. You just need to ask if there is one. And then you in doing that are part of the solution because it allows them to get it off their chest, you know? Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, I interrupted, but
100%. That's
I
cool.
was like, I wrote that one quote down because I loved it so much.
That's amazing. Well, thanks for sharing that. And I guess it's just a way to put a blanket over a deeper root cause. Yes.
Yeah.
And there's a beautiful line that it says it's okay to let the bird in your mind, but do not let it make a nest. And
Right.
that is where we get into trouble. And I think that when we live in here, when there's a lot of pain, it can get dark pretty quick. We isolate, we withdraw, and we turn to that destruction. And so for me and others, I think what's absolutely key is to find healthy alternatives to be able to be free from the emotions that no longer serve us. And you know what? Not all of us want to talk. I didn't.
Mm-hmm.
My greatest outlet was always pen and paper. I would write
Mm-hmm.
and write and write, and then I would burn it. I would bury it. I'd put it in a balloon. I would get rid of it
Yeah.
because darkness begs to see the light of day. And until we're willing to go within, we're going to have the same results.
It's
I would also say, sorry, I
yeah.
think because you wanted to know how to identify it, the number one
Okay, I
thing for
forgot that I
me
even said that. I was so into everything else, but I guess I did ask you a question. Yeah.
is like denial.
Yeah. Right.
Is a more comfortable place to be, but I
Right.
would say at the top of the list, Candace, if you think that there's a problem, there probably is.
Right. So even if you're at the point where you have a chance to go, you're considering it and then saying, "Oh, well, actually, no, it's all fine." Then the fact that you even asked the question, right? It,
100%.
another a thing too that you just mentioned was anger, and I think that especially, again for my purposes of the male-dominated industries, anyone listening from that. You know what I'm trying to say, is
Demographic.
demographic. Thank you. Is I can also identify with that, and people will probably be shocked to hear this who aren't close to me because I'm such a warm person. I love love. I love connections. I'll be hugging people on the plane before the plane ride's over half the
Mm,
time.
mm,
I really love to connect, as do you. But when it came for a very long time until I went into therapy, which was I think 5 years ago, I refused
mm,
all of that for 20 years. There was no need
mm.
of that. I was on it. I started speaking within a year of losing my leg. I had this under control. I always say if I stopped too long or if I cried at all, of course I did, but if I really let myself feel those feelings, that I might never make it back. So it was almost too scary for me. And a very easy feeling for me was to get angry. So I would say when reading your book, a lot of the generalizations, a lot of the facts that speak to how men deal with things, I'm like, people probably would be surprised because they would think I would just share and talk because I talk and I talk and I talk. But when the rubber hits the road, I find it easy to get angry. And I'm working on it. I'm a work in progress, as we all are. But that's something that I realized when I met my life partner, Sean, 5 years ago. I was like, I'm going to destroy this relationship because, I can see the pattern starting again of me getting angry and feeling scared, right? And my therapist helped me and said, you took a step over a conveyor belt and almost lost your life and lost your footing. And you were surrounded by a small town. Everyone knew you by your last name. You're surrounded by all of these people who happen to be men and made choices that really did contribute to what happened to you. I'm not a blame game person, but someone removed a guard, somebody disabled an emergency stop, somebody set a bad example, and for so long I didn't want to think about those things, but I can see now how they manifested into my adult life, where I was very scared that the ground would be taken out from underneath me again if I trusted or if I let my guard down, right? And so, I mean, I guess all that to say, I don't even know what, but therapy, yay, right? I'm not going to say why didn't I do it sooner, because I did what I did and I don't really look back with regard to those things with regret. But what a difference it makes to be able to put meaning behind your anger, your fear, your whatever it is you're feeling, your addiction. So
Well, that's
sorry, go. Yep.
Again, I just find that that's incredible insight, Candace, that you can look back and recognize that anger was a driving force for me as well. And thanks to a lot of therapy and a lot of anger management sessions, I was also able to understand that anger is a secondary emotion, because actually in hindsight for me, what drove it was sadness.
Yeah.
But again, I didn't know how to go to that place, so I reverted to anger. And then, as we know, hurt people hurt people.
Mm-hmm.
I became, and I'm like you, Candace, like I feel a lot. I love connecting, but I became you talk about road rage. I was the guy who would follow people to their house and wait for them to get out of their car. Like, that's not healthy.
I almost spit my water out for those who aren't seeing the video.
Yeah.
Okay, you were that guy.
Candace, I went to, I used to sit in these dark alleys in Edmonton and just call on anyone. And I remember there was this one day where I actually chased down a guy and he turned around and I had my fist back and the look on his face was just absolute terror. And then I realized that this was someone who appeared to be completely homeless. And I was like, I have to look at this. Like, I am not proud of the person I've become. But again, the root was that I was hurt.
Yeah.
And we all have that pain inside. And for you, maybe it was the counselor who provided that safe space. It was for me in many ways too, where I could just be free from some of that darkness.
Well, yeah, and it's interesting. Like I have such a supportive family and friend network, but I just didn't feel that was what I could do. I felt like I needed to keep that stiff upper lip and be that positive person. And of course, I was getting all this positive reinforcement. Look at her go. Look at the, and yay, and overcoming and all the things. And, I remember one time, my cousin who was recently diagnosed with ADHD, and for so long didn't know why she felt the way she felt. I remember her, one time saying to me, it was hard for me because I was having my own struggle, but everyone in my family was saying, well, look at Candace, look at what she went through. You can't compare. You can't compare. And in my work as well, I'm so passionate about reminding people or educating people on the fact that not all injuries, most injuries are in fact invisible, just like hazards can also be invisible. I can take my leg off and show someone, hey, look at how I got hurt, but that's not the part that hurts the most, And so it's so important that in our day-to-day lives that we're always recognizing that somebody doesn't have to have a neck brace or a cast or pipe for an arm or whatever the case might be, to be actually walking around feeling a lot of pain and injury. And sharing our stories is so important, but comparing our stories is not the, then to me that's an issue, is when people are saying, well, I went through this, so this, that, it's there's a huge difference between the comparing and the sharing and the learning and the supporting and the so
Absolutely. And I mean, essentially, just because someone is smiling does not mean that they're happy. Like, how often do we hear, especially with the work that I do, I get called to communities after there's been a suicide. I was in Medicine Hat a couple of weeks ago for a recovery conference, and I remember back in 2020, I did a free virtual event for the community because they had lost 6 men, and the feedback was always the same. It's like, how did this happen? This was the guy who was always so happy and outgoing, and I lost my best friend. Justin Andres is suicide.
I know,
same thing.
Yeah.
Myself did that dance way too many times, and if I'm honest, Justin's suicide saved my life. But it speaks to the fact how effective we often are at hiding that internal pain in the workplace, in the community, in the home.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for that reason, that's why I value and appreciate, respect the work that you do, because you pave the way for others. The next generation, like, they're always watching, right? And I just find it fascinating that Creator, God, whatever word, blessed Tanya and I with 4 boys. I will not have them go through some of those challenges that I did.
Even just with the little things of, oh, why are you crying, or stop crying. I'm child-free by choice, but I have a little nephew and niece that are my sunshine for sure. And reading your book and just putting more thought into how we offer not necessarily support, but how we invite people to feel their feelings, and how important it is for us to start that when children are young, and to not do this thing where it's, well, he's a girl, or she's a girl, he's a boy, so it's okay. Even with looking into how women are moving in now to non-traditional roles and male-dominated industry, I just think there's so much also to be talking about with regard to physical health and well-being, because men and women are different, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we have to create spaces for it to be okay to say, hey, I'm in perimenopause. I'm in perimenopause. I'm telling the whole world about it because it's not my fault. We shouldn't feel ashamed that something is happening with our physiological body, and the way that we're made. We should be able to embrace that, and figure out ways to work together and talk about whatever it might be. So I guess all that to say is just, I commend you for, and it makes sense given what you've gone through, that you have the wherewithal and the forward thinking to already, to be thinking about your children, especially boys, and how you want to allow them and encourage them to not only feel their feelings, but also to speak up for others and create that safe space the way you do. I want to ask you a question. A lot of the stories in Mental Health, Time to Talk, your most recent book, were based, they're based in Saskatchewan, and so much around farming and rural communities. And a lot of the places I often go to work at, plants and manufacturing and pulp mills and whatnot, are similar, right? And my partner, Sean, grew up in small town Ontario, and he grew up as a farm boy and, left the farm after high school. So it really provoked a lot of conversation that I had with him too. I said, honey, was it like that for you, that because you grew up on the farm, that if you worked longer hours or you threw more bales of hay, that was, a badge of honor? Was that your experience? And he said, absolutely. There was no time for whining or for not feeling good. Like, there was work to be done, and you had to man up, and do it. And I think it's so awesome that, Sean is able to talk about feelings and to look back and recognize that was part of the way he was brought up. But at the same time, he can very well say that's not the right way. That's not what we need. So I guess the question is, do you think that men, I mean, maybe we can say people in general, but let's say men are as hard on other men as the men perceive that they are? Like, do you know what I'm saying? Like, if I'm going, oh, I want to say I did this or that, or I'm so tough, I don't want to ask that question or show weakness because of what Tom will think of me. I mean, do you think Tom's actually really thinking of me?
Exactly. I think we live in our head so
Yeah.
often, and often we rent out headspace fearing what others might perceive us to be. And that's sad because then we miss out on our journey.
Right.
Like we give our power away, essentially. And have you ever found that often what you thought was going to happen didn't happen?
Oh,
Because
all the
like
time.
it's and I think that's part of the problem. Because one of the things, Candace, that I found really interesting is in that book, I interviewed a lot of people. Every person said that when they finally met with a person that they trusted, keyword
Yeah.
around trust, and they talked, they felt better. They felt liberated. They felt like they no longer had to hide behind that proverbial mask. Of course they did. We
Right.
already talked about this, right? Emotions are energy. And so the goal is to create that space where an individual can just be free from that. I guarantee every single person listening has had that moment where they got a lot on the plate. They got a lot on the go. They talk to someone who they trust for 10 minutes. Bleh, they just talk.
Yeah.
The other person listens. At the end of the 10 minutes, they sit back and they're like, what? I feel better. Why? I mean, the other person did nothing, and yet I would also argue that they did everything. And I think we overthink this.
Yeah, I agree, and that brings me back to the point of people not recognizing the power they have within their actions by just asking someone to share, asking somebody what's wrong, if they need help or whatever the case might be. You don't have to be the solution to anyone's problems, but just give them space to talk. One of my favorite stories in your book was at the end, and it was, I'm looking at my notes, but Tyson Williamson. Okay, so can you sum up the story of Tyson Williamson for our listeners? So, because I'm talking too much, I want you to do it, but I'd like to tell you, see what you say, and then share what really resonated with me. What I love so much about this is one thing that I say to every audience is, you never know what the one thing is you might do or say in the run of a day that could change a life or even save one. I heard a story one time about somebody out in Washington who was going to, kill themselves, commit suicide on a bridge. And somebody walked up to them and said, hi. And that's what brought them out. They were in the newspaper. This was a secondhand story, right? But hi. So when someone's in the depths of despair, and it's not even necessarily that obvious to other people, you never know what that one thing is that's going to stick with somebody or bring them back around or make them realize, hey, there is another option. I don't have to exit the world right now and in this way. So Tyson's story is a great example of all of that.
And I'll get to Tyson's story right away, but that's very true, Candace. And I think just to add to what you said is rarely do we hear the impact that we actually had. In Tyson's situation, you do. But for example, there were so many nights where I was in absolute despair with my addictions, immersed with mental illness, not in a good headspace. And I tell you, so many people who cared about me would send a message, an email, a phone, a voicemail. I didn't answer. I didn't respond. That doesn't mean that I didn't feel it, because it's a sad day when the email stopped, the phone stops ringing, and you stop getting texts. I felt it. And I love that you encourage people to just do something or say something in those moments. He's a beautiful soul. He is a beautiful, beautiful soul. And for him, he was able to see Michael Landsberg, who is the host of TSN's Off the Record. Michael Landsberg was talking to another man, and Tyson says that was the first time that he ever saw two men talk openly on TV about mental health.
And a hockey superstar at that.
Correct. That's right.
Yeah.
And Tyson had actually picked that day to die. And he had everything set up. After he watched that episode, he still had intentions of carrying through with his suicide. But he did decide to send a quick email to Landsberg and just say, that was amazing. You know, I've never seen that before. And I can't remember his exact language.
He said, it's too late for me.
God,
but thank
too
you.
Late for me.
Yeah.
Send. And then he went back to his closet where he had rigged up a belt, and he heard that ping indicating that he had received an email. And to his absolute complete surprise, that was Landsberg, who just said, what do you mean it's too late? And the short and sweet is they had a brief interaction through email. And basically Landsberg said, like, how will you know if you don't try? Yeah. And that was enough for Tyson to get out from that period of darkness and get the help that he so desperately needed. And the beautiful, beautiful thing about Tyson's story is that when Tyson ended up getting married, which was just north of Prince Albert in Saskatchewan, who flies all the way, rents a car, and shows up in the wedding party? Michael Landsberg.
As his best man.
Isn't that mind-blowing?
It's mind-blowing. And the piece that made me cry, brought tears right to my eyes, is when Michael Landsberg was coming for an event and Tyson wanted to go with his partner and the tickets were too expensive. So he instead asked Michael if they could meet for a coffee. And then somehow tickets came to Tyson so that him and his partner could attend. And I love how he says the dress code was prairie chic, and he went in his golf shirt and everyone was in 3-piece suits, but he didn't care because he was there and he was going to meet Michael. And he sat down at the table and Michael got up to speak and said, I'm here today because of what happened on October 24th, was it? Yeah. And then he introduced Tyson as being the reason, as to why he was up on that stage, because it was the first time he had talked about mental health on television and openly. And he saw through the work he did with Tyson and Tyson's outreach that what kind of a difference it made. So, I mean, if that's not just, I'm on so many levels showing us all of the layers of opportunities that we have to step in, to send that message, to respond, to give that acknowledgement, and I think Tyson says when he found his legs, he realized that all the stars and the sports people that he had been cheering for his whole life were standing up and cheering for him.
It's beautiful.
It's just, and I shared that with Sean and my partner, and I looked over in his eyes. We're all so welling up. I'm like, you're so in touch with your emotions. I'm like, I'm happy about that. But that's that's one of so many incredible stories in mental health. It's time to talk. I mean, I didn't know, Alan, when I actually started reading the book, that it wasn't going to be about your story primarily. And then I realized very soon on that you were giving voice and creating a something for other people to read that shared the stories of so many. So there's no way, no matter who you are, in my opinion, or what you do, there's no way you could read that book and the stories of so many people, men, and the people in their families and in their lives, and not feel a connection, or hey, me too, or or hey, I realize now my brother was struggling with this, or I can see now the impact if I had have taken that extra step and decided to truly end my life, that it would have had on my wife and the people who loved me that I thought I was letting down. I mean, there's just so much in that. Alan, you're writing another book. You're working on a book about your personal journey. How's that going?
It's hard.
It's really hard. I've been writing a book for 3.5 years about my personal story, and I'm interested to know how long you've been working at it. You seem to be way better at putting out books than I do. You have a few out there, I know. But so what's that like for you? Are you keeping a schedule to writing? Are you writing when you feel, when you have time? Because it's hard when you're out there putting it all out on stage and you're putting your heart out to people afterwards and in between. And then it's like, when can you find that energy to go within yourself to tell the truth on paper, right?
Yeah. It's like I have so many addictive tendencies, and I know this about myself. I want everything now, like I want the book to be done now, and I rush everything. But with this one, it's different. This one, I don't have a timeline. It's bigger than me, similar to speaking. Honestly,
Yeah.
it was like 14 years ago when I had just gotten sober that I was like, the world needs my story. And I bet I typed probably 250 pages. And I was so, I think I wanted to heal. I wasn't ready. I hadn't done the work. And it was just like, you want to know what hell looks like? Here, take a peek. There was no, let me show you where I was and how to get out of it. And so I think the challenge for me is, I guess, to lend yourself credible that you've been to some of these places, but it still has to be, upbeat. And because I have kids, the question is, how much do my kids need to know? And so the other thing is, every single person listening, every single person, like I said earlier, has those places that are they're really tough. Sexual abuse was one of those things that surfaced early in my sobriety. Suicide, a common theme, self-harm. I mean, there's a lot in there for all of us. And I think that what I've learned is have your community around you when you go to some of those places. And I have support systems in place. I started meeting with the counselor again regularly because I found that it just provoked things that I thought I had perhaps navigated through. That wasn't the case. And I think that's also grief, isn't it? Or any emotions.
Yeah.
It just has a tendency to come and go. But the difference, Candace, for me is that when it surfaces, I now give myself permission to look at it. Whereas in the past, I used to just suppress it, stuff it, and turn to anything external to numb.
Yeah.
So yeah, no timeline.
Good. Letting
We'll
yourself
see.
feel it. Letting yourself feel it.
Yeah, and
Alan,
that's new for me.
I can concur. We're running out of time. I'm like, oh, I just want to keep diving into everything. I know I'm with you. It's new for me as well. And I look back to 25 years ago when I started speaking. All I had then was the description of how I felt and what happened to me with my leg, But 25 years later, you've gone to some different places and you have more education and awareness and shared experiences and lived experiences to be in a place to actually truly speak about these things in a helpful way. And so I want to close off with, I want to leave our listeners, well, this isn't actually going to air until next year, but that's okay. It doesn't matter if it's going into the holiday season or if it's going into whatever. Life is constantly causing us to have to think about what's coming up in the future. How are we going to create boundaries? What are we going to say is too much, is not enough, is unnecessary, is necessary? How do we prioritize? What, as an end note, what would you say to people when they have potentially overwhelming /stressful /busy events coming up in their lives, like the holidays or a wedding or somebody who's unwell in their life, or just challenging things? What is a coping mechanism or like a tidbit of in your experience that people who are listening can keep in mind? to stay centered, stay grounded, and ensure that they're putting themselves first so that they can take care of others?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think a lot of people feel guilty when they put their own needs before the needs of someone else, which right there is something that I think needs to be examined. And I guess for me, Candace, so many years, I viewed life as something that you just get through. You live, you die. I existed. I didn't live. And I think that I have bought into this belief that no, life is actually something that's supposed to be enjoyable. The difference is I am the one who has to create that life that I want. And so my hope is that for listeners in this fast-paced world, they can slow down, go within, figure out what it is that they actually want in life. And then the question is, what are you going to do to make sure that happens? And to your point, you have to have tough conversations. You have to set boundaries. People hate the word no, but you have to prioritize your own wellness. And life can be enjoyable when you do the work. For me, I understood that healing is work. I understood that hope was real and healing is possible. If you want something different, then you have to do something different.
What a great way to wind this down. And to sum up what you said, because I just spoke with my little brother who's not sure where he's going next in his life right now. I said, you got to think about what your priorities are and ask yourself as often as you can think of, is the decisions I'm making and what I'm doing a vote for what my priorities are and what matters the most, or against, right? So is it contributing to me getting to where I say I want to go, or is it hindering that? Alan, there hasn't been enough time. I hope this is the first of many conversations that we might have, and that I will get to meet you in person. Thank you for not only being here, but for the work that you do. You are out there saving lives. I love following your journey, and I will sign off with your sign off, if I may be so bold, and say, keep talking, my friends. Thank you for listening to Sharing Stories, Changing Lives. Please tune in wherever you listen to your podcasts. And if you're interested in finding out where I'm sharing my story next, visit me at www.candacecarnahan.com.